Am I the asshole for ignoring my wife's concerns regarding help funding my parents' long-term care? My father's health has started to decline. Myself and my 3 siblings have agreed to fund not only our father's current care but also our mother's future care. Between the 4 of us we can keep our parents in their home without having to worry about dealing with the hassle and bureaucracy around MLTC. All 4 of us understand that our father's care will progressively increase and thus the cost. We have agreed to each split the cost 4 ways, while also using a portion of our current investment, savings to fund a trust for our parents. To ease some of the long-term costs we all agreed to pay off our parents' house, and eliminate all of their debt. We each make a decent living, we all live comfortable lives and have minimal to no debt. Each of us felt this was the right thing to do. My siblings' partners did have their own concerns but understood why their respective partner is choosing to do this. My situation is a tad different. My siblings have partners that work, and only have 1 to 2 children. My case is my wife is a STAHM, and while we have no children between the 2 of us, she does have 3 children from a past marriage and 1 is special needs. My income covers everything we need and more, however, rightfully so she is worried about the future since anything can happen. My wife is not too keen on me agreeing to commit to funding the care of my parents that could upwards live for another 25–30 years. She is worried about our future. I do understand her concerns, and as I told her, while foolish and naive of me, I just do not have the headspace to think that far into the future. All I can do is take care of what I can in the moment and do my best to plan for the future. She was not pleased with this mindset, understandably so. She explained how that extra money could go towards bolstering the kids' college funds, and our own future among other things. Which is correct, but, as I explained to her, this is an agreement all 4 of us have made. And while I do love you and the kids, I will refuse to let my siblings go down this path and care for our parents without my support because our situation is slightly different from theirs. She then asked me what happens if things get unsustainable. I told her if they do get unsustainable I will cross that bridge. She kept pressing for an answer, when I said we would just have to figure it out. Maybe if one income is no longer sustainable, then maybe we will have to look about getting 2 incomes for the house. With that being said, after hours of going back and forth, I told my wife I understand your feelings and concerns. I will still be helping my parents, that is just the way it is going to be. I kindly asked her to please understand the situation and my circumstances. Too long did not read. She called me an asshole for ignoring every of her concerns and issues and commit myself to something that may very well become unsustainable in the future as care costs increase and our own personal expenses increase. Edit. My wife and I come from 2 very different backgrounds in terms of expectations around supporting family and caring for parents. My parents have raised us with the mindset that family helps and support family in their time of need, no questions asked. Now, not everyone on our side of the family shares this mindset, but amongst us being my siblings and I, we have always been there to help one another no matter what. We are all extremely close. My wife's family has always been about caring for yourself first before others, and I understand why she has this mindset. We were far from rich, but we were also not poor. My wife was not so lucky. She had a rough childhood and did struggle a great deal, while in my case, when we struggled, we always had a support system to help us out of the struggle. I do get where she is coming from, but this is just one of those cases where I just cannot accept the concerns of the unknown when my parents need help in the moment. She expects you to pay for her and her kids but not your parents. Not the asshole. Your wife should be receiving child support for her 3 children from their father or government assistance if he is not in the picture. Her 3 kids can apply for scholarships and you can address any needed loans when that time comes. Your parents need assistance now and you are right to work with your siblings to make sure they are cared for. Not the asshole. It sounds like you're the main provider for her kids from a previous marriage, which is far more than what you need to do. And you didn't say you're not gonna help the kids out in the future. You just said we'll need to figure it out. And you will. Not the asshole. So if you couldn't afford it or somehow your finances now were severely impacted from what you're doing for your parents, I'd understand your wife's concerns. But what exactly is she expecting to happen? I know life is unpredictable, but she's being incredibly selfish here in saying you can't help your own family. Not the asshole. Am I the asshole for screaming at my friend during his birthday party? I, 29M, recently went to my friend's, 28M, birthday party. For the sake of simplicity, I'll call him Luke. I met Luke in college and we have been fairly close friends ever since. I wouldn't say he's my closest friend, but we're close enough to where he invited me to his birthday party. He knows a decent bit about my history, but I really don't like to talk about my past that much. I won't get into the details, but I do suffer from PTSD and used to cope with drugs. To put the entire story into a super oversimplified sentence, my dad is a dick and I used to have a coke problem. However, I can say that I am now completely sober and have been for a year. Luke doesn't know all the details of my past, but he does know that I used to be an addict. I hadn't had any close calls for a while until last night when I went to Luke's birthday party. I was told it would be a small hangout, but when arrived, it was a party. Probably 30–40 people at the peak, loud music, and enough alcohol to feed a village. Luke was always the type of guy who liked parties, so this wasn't a huge shock. Everything was fine for the first part of the night. That was until I saw out of the corner of my eye some people, including Luke, sitting around a table doing lines. The whole party was starting to gravitate in that direction, and I could tell that this was about to become the sole focus of the rest of the night. Now I want to clarify, I have no issue if those people want to partake in that. Do whatever you want, it's your funeral. What I did have a problem with, was my friend inviting me to his party knowing damn well that there was going to be drugs and that I was a recovering addict. I had managed to stay clean for so long, and it was literally a few feet away from me. This was my worst nightmare. I blew up at him, I pulled him to the side and screamed at how stupid he was and how shitty it was of him to do this to his supposed friend. My screaming drew the attention of a lot of the crowd and Luke looked horribly embarrassed, but I stormed out before he could respond to me. I went home, and went to bed, but when I woke up I had a catalog of texts from Luke saying how he didn't think it would have mattered to me because I had been sober for so long, and that regardless it was out of line for me to explode like that because it ruined his birthday. He keeps saying that if I didn't like it, I should have just left and not made my addiction everyone else's problem. To me, it felt like a huge violation of trust. I had confided in him that I had drug problems and he failed to consider me or even warn me beforehand that this would be happening at his party. I haven't responded to anything he has said yet, but I am still absolutely pissed at him. So, am I the asshole for yelling at my friend at his birthday party? Edit. Someone advised me to add this. Luke is the one who brought the coke. I saw him pull it out of his own backpack and pass it around the table. Edit 2. Hey, just wanted to say thanks for all the verdicts and opinions. Unfortunately, in light of the events discussed in this post and all the discussion happening in this thread, I've had some dangerous thoughts resurfacing, so I am going to log off for a bit for my own safety. I am planning to reach out to Luke in the coming days to try and clear the air, but I do not intend to continue to remain being around him. Once again, thanks for all the replies, see you later. I don't get all the "you are the assholes" here, as you simply don't knowingly invite someone struggling with addiction to a party after they get sober where they are tempted to start using again. If you want to do drugs, don't invite the recovering addict, or if you want to invite the recovering addict, don't do drugs. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. I do agree with the comments on here saying that it's your responsibility to manage your addiction, but if he was actually a good friend he wouldn't have put you in this situation in the first place. If he was more of an acquaintance, I would say you overreacted, but if he is really a close friend he sold have told you there would be drugs at the party. He might have even lied about the nature of the party to get you to relapse. Why didn't you leave? You are the asshole. We all have a past, problems and struggles. They are for us to deal with. You made his party about you. You should have left. Info. Who brought the drugs, Luke or one of his other friends? Would I be the asshole if I confronted my friend for not letting me practice in the house? I, 20M. Live with 3 housemates, who we'll call Dave, 19M, Sally, 19F, and Kyle, 19M. All 4 of us are students. Sally, Kyle and I are musicians, and Dave isn't. I play the flute, while Kyle is a vocalist and Sally is an electric bassist. Kyle and Sally also play fife for their summer jobs. As an added piece of context, Sally and Dave are dating. I would practice flute for 30 minutes 1 hour every couple days and have an hour-long lesson weekly. At first, Dave didn't bring up any problems with it, so I assumed he was okay with me practicing. But, in the middle of a lesson, Dave came up to my room and asked if I could do my lessons in the music building at our university. I told him I'd see what I could do. In reality, I wasn't going to do that, I just needed to figure out a way to tell him no. That would be too much work because I would have to take all of my equipment to another place just for a lesson and bring it all back right before I have work. A couple days later, I was just practicing and he interrupts me to ask if I could practice elsewhere, and I told him I'd think about it. Later that day, my housemates and I had a discussion that lasted an hour and a half to talk about this situation. Sally sided with Dave, but stayed quiet because she can practice quietly, plug headphones into her amp, and refuses to practice fife off the clock. We asked if Dave could wear headphones, but he said no because he doesn't like the way they feel on his head and got upset we were pushing headphones on him, which was only because it is the easiest solution. The solution we reached was we would have loud versus quiet days. On loud days, we could practice at home for an hour slot, but on quiet days, we would need to practice elsewhere. Kyle and I didn't like it, but agreed to it because we could practice at home sometimes. At first, I only practiced on loud days to maliciously comply with it, but we never set up any more weeks after the first one. The new rule became, practice when Dave's at work, but I was never told that. I only heard it from Kyle after Dave and Sally decided on it. Without me. Or Kyle, as far as I know. That rule sucks because his hours have gotten cut way back and he only works small morning shifts. I am not a morning person, and by the time I'm ready to do stuff, Dave's home. Kyle also works full-time and his schedule completely overlaps with Dave's. Today when I got home from work, Kyle told me the new rule and we ranted about it. We both have ranted about this to a lot of our friends, and every single person we have spoken to has said Dave is being entitled. Out of all of my friends I have spoken to about this, only one of them was a musician. We want to talk to Dave and Sally because we believe it is ridiculous that we can't practice in our own home without tight rules and need advice. Would we be assholes if we confronted them? If not, what should we say to them? I had to cut a lot of info, feel free to ask for more info. It's only an hour. Why is Dave being such an asshole about it? Why can't he just wear headphones for an hour? Not the asshole. You need to call a meeting with all of your housemates, including Sally and Dave. If you are going to live together, you need to make it very clear that you have a right to practice flute and get a firm compromise. If Dave and Sally are not going to respect your wishes, it's time for you to start looking for another place to live. Not the asshole dude is living with 3 musicians. Info. That would be too much work because I would have to take all of my equipment to another place just for a lesson. Do you have more to transport than your flute? Dave knew he would be living with 3 musicians yet he moved in anyway. Dave now complains when said musicians need to practice. Dave won't use headphones. Dave is a dick. Am I the asshole for forcing my kids to go on a diet, according to my wife? So me, 36M, and my wife, 37F, have been together for almost 12 years now. And we have 3 kids, 11F, 9F, 8M. Me and my wife are going on a trip together in a few weeks and my brother-in-law, my late brother's long-term fiancé, would be looking after the kids while we were gone. Now for some context that will be relevant, Mr. and my eldest child are overweight, and my wife and our youngest 2 are obese. My wife loves her body as is and I love her no matter what. She really into something called the fat acceptance movement, which makes her happy so I support but I know barely anything about it. My brother-in-law and his 2 kids are healthy and in shape. 2 days ago I went to my BIL's house to help set things up and go over his house rules. We set up a bunk bed in the spare room. It already had a bed but now it has 3, and afterwards he made lunch and we sat down to talk. He went through some of the house rules he has that he would expect my kids to follow, and they were all really fair. Things like cleaning up your own mess, keeping your room tidy, helping with chores around the house. These aren't rules he made up for my kids, they are the rules that his kids already follow. Then there was the food rule. My brother-in-law says that he controls the kids' portions and how many snacks he gets them, but he had no control over food and snacks the kids buy themselves using allowance. I asked if I could join them for dinner so I could see and he said yeah. He served dinner and I immediately saw the difference between the food he makes and what my wife makes. I then saw his kids serve their own portions and were about half the size and what me and our kids would have and a third of what my wife would have. And I'm not saying my brother-in-law isn't feeding his kids properly, I'm just pointing out the difference. I also found out that they only have dessert a few times a week and only after dinner, while my wife will serve dessert after every meal that isn't breakfast. I honestly really liked how my brother-in-law handled food with his kids and was thinking to possibly imploring something similar in our house after the trip if our kids adjusted well to it. Anyway, I went home and was explaining the rules to my wife, and then we got to the one about food and she flipped out. She said that no one should police how much someone else eats, especially if you aren't that person's parent. She accused my brother-in-law of being fatphobic, purposely targeting her kids. I tried to explain that he had these rules for his kids as well, and that we can just make sure our kids have enough allowance to get whatever snacks they want, and that I actually liked the idea. She started screaming at me, calling me fatphobic and accusing me of wanting her and the kids to lose weight. I kinda do. Not because I don't find her attractive, just because I want my family to be healthy. She refused to talk to me after this, and says I'm trying to force a harmful diet onto our kids, so am I the asshole? I personally agree that parents should serve their kids healthy portions. My parents did, and I've never been overweight. And that dessert should be an occasional treat, not something they have every meal. Maybe taken to your pediatrician. Not the asshole, but I'm not sure that matters if your wife thinks you are. Not the asshole. Your brother-in-law impressed you with his family's healthy relationship with food. You want to have that same healthy relationship for your family. You should stick to your guns. It isn't fat shaming to want to be healthier and have a healthier relationship with food. Not the asshole. She's being ridiculous. She has got to see that your kids are just too big for their ages. I'd get the pediatrician to explain to wife that your kids are unhealthy, not just bigger. I'd also have a chat with the kids themselves. The 8-yo might not understand it fully, but certainly the 11 and 9-yo are capable of recognizing that they are bigger than their peers. And I'd bet they're not happy about it. Explain the food rules at Bill's for when they will be staying there, and ask them to try it out and see how they feel about it. They might surprise you when you get back from your trip and want to begin a more healthy way of eating. I don't think your wife loves her bodymate. Nobody who's happy in their own skin flips out at reasonable lifestyle adjustments. The body positivity movement, like every movement, has good points and bad points. Good point: people shouldn't have to feel ashamed of themselves or ridiculed or attacked for being obese. Downside: people can now fool themselves into thinking that being fat is healthy or good. Also, you do need to get your children's weight under control and give them a healthy start in life. Adults allowing themselves to get fat, guilty as charged here, is a lifestyle choice. Raising your kids obese is, in my opinion, neglect. Not the asshole. It sounds to me more like your wife had an unhealthy relationship with food. Wanting to be a little healthier with food is a good thing.